And hello, welcome to Solo Playthroughs. We are going to have a good one today as I present to you the quarterly top 10, and this is the first time in Solo Playthroughs history, that's right, all 2 years of it, that we will be talking about the same game in back-to-back quarterly top 10s. And that's right, we are going back to Atlantis, folks, because if you remember, 3 months ago, I did my top 10 mages list, and I was like, Greg, there aren't 10 mages. How are you? Yes, I cheated. I added the 3 elite units. It is what it is. Who's ever heard of a top 7? Not this guy. So we did a top 10 with 3 elite units in there. Super, super fun. Had a great time at that, and the feedback was good. I was expecting pitchforks to come after me when I put Tovak at the bottom of that list of 7. But, everyone kind of seemed to agree, like, hey, maybe he's not that strong. Really good intro character, but, not the strongest of the mages when compared to the rest. And it seems like from the comments that I opened some of your eyes to Krang and how awesome that dude is. And that makes me happy to see. So hopefully we get some really good feedback on this top 10 as well. I'm going to be talking about the Mage Knight scenarios. Now, look, you really aren't talking about all that many of scenarios that can be played solo, right? So most of them are going to be discussed. I will tell you right now, I will not be talking about first recognizance. Just don't find it even comes close to the rest of the scenarios. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to teach someone, maybe if you don't want to go through a full cooperation right off the bat and throw them in the deep end. But really, first recognizance, it is what it is. It just doesn't belong in this list according to me. So I'm going to be talking about the different scenarios, what they've meant to me when I came to them, what I've learned from them, and the different things that I like about them, maybe some things I don't like about them at the bottom part of this list, and then we'll go from there. So let's get to it, starting with number 10. It shouldn't be a huge surprise that the bottom of this list is going to have a lot of the Tezla scenarios, if not all of them, because I came to Tezla a lot later in my Mage Knight career. Not much of a career. I mean, the quasi career for me, barely at best at this point, right? But Mage Knight for me was all about Solo Conquest, and it was all about the Volcare scenarios. And then it's like, all right, let me see what this Tezla thing's all about as I started to do more Mage Knight and play more Mage Knight with the channel kind of leading the way. And I wanted some more content. And look, I'm so glad I did. I really, really like Tezla. In a sense, I like what the scenarios bring. I like how they make me think about this game differently. I think learning how to play and beat the Tezla scenarios has really helped with my ability to play the other scenarios well, and as I tried tougher and tougher challenges, right? But there is something about the Tezla scenarios that feels like it doesn't hold up to the original scenarios for me. I find some of the mechanics a little clunky. I find the enemies to be okay. I find them to be a little harder. It's harder to get fame. The faction reward system is interesting. If you get enough of those, though, you can really cheese some things through interaction, and you can really get some units. I mean, so there's some things about Tezla that it just is a change of pace for me. Can be very, very fun. I just find that it just doesn't deliver on a consistent basis as much as some of the more traditional scenarios that you see in Lost Legion and you see in the base game. That said, we are going to go with number 10 is going to be Realm of the Dead. Now, it was, why not Hidden Valley, where they're kind of the same thing, right? You're just dealing with one faction. I think Realm of the Dead just has a few like finicky things that I just find make for a less enjoyable experience. And how you have to build in the Realm of the Dead. I mean, you really need a ton of block, which isn't a really fun way to play because you have so many enemies that have paralyzed. The faction leader has a ton of paralyzed. The vampiric math thing gets super annoying because you're just like, well, I took a wound from him, so now his armor is that. That's annoying. Having to seal the graveyard with a freaking mana, like, just doesn't, I find that annoying. It doesn't make any sense to me, but you have to seal this stupid graveyard. There's just a lot of things about it that aren't interesting to me. I mean, you have, the different faction tokens for the Dark Crusader factions. Some of them are cool. I just, they're not playing with the elements as much. There's just a lot of things that are like, all right, it's fine. The enemies in the Realm of the Dead scenario, they get pursuit. That's cool, right? They're kind of chasing you around. For the most part, it doesn't change the math all that much. in some ways it almost makes it easier. It's like, oh, it gets closer to me. Now I can, as my action for the turn, I'm going to kill that dude who would have been 3 hexes away, but now he's adjacent to me. So you're like, all right, you're just kind of playing around with that math, and you can kind of proceed accordingly. And again, the Necromancer himself, I mean, that level 6 paralyze is kind of silly. Then you've gotten the double summoning on level 4. I find the summoning in Tezla not to be that great because, again, you're normally running out of enemies. So you're just kind of regurgitating the same enemies through the scenario in a way. I just wish they had like 4 or 6 more enemy tokens. I think could go a long way for Tezla. So it is what it is. Again, solid change of pace, nothing great. I will play it on occasion. But generally, if I'm going to go to Tezla, I'm going to be going to the next scenario on my list. If I just want to face one faction, I'm going to go to number 9, the Hidden Valley. So the Hidden Valley, there's a lot of things I like about the Realm of the Dead, but in my opinion, with my playstyle, I just like it better. You don't have to worry about the stupid ceiling mechanic or adding these freaking graveyards or whatever. I find the enemies more interesting. I mean, you got Cloud Griffins, you got Minotaurs, and then you got not Minotaurs, Centaurs. I'm very sorry, Mr. Centaur. You were a Centaur, not a Minotaur. You got these friggin' Sprits and the Earth Elementals, the Water Elemental, the Air Elementals. I just like all of that. I like the faction tokens. I think they're really interesting. The way you can just add elemental attack. I find them a lot more likely that I'm going to want to hold on to them because of the impact that they do, and I'm not going to want to cheese things by just kind of throwing them away for influence or fame when I'm doing interaction. I think the strategy element that this one adds, where it's like, oh, I can reveal a tile several spaces away, I find that super interesting. So there's a lot going on here with these little faction tokens. This one, I mean, I can ignore a wound and I ignore all the effects of it. That's super strategic and how that comes together. And then you have the High Priestess herself. I think that's what she's called. I have to check that out. But her attacks all have elemental attack. I just find her super challenging. She does have the paralyze, but it's at level 2 instead of the level 6 like it is with the Necromancer. You know, then the paralyze after that. The next one's at level 8. You're probably not playing these scenarios at those high levels. So I just really like the Hidden Valley and what it does, and how, you know, all the elements, like in earth, fire, wind, they're just kind of represented by the different enemies that are there in a way that I find very, very cool. I also think ambush is much more interesting than pursuit, in a sense, because it totally changes the map. Because pursuit, you know that sucker's coming toward you. Ambush, you're like, well, I'm 2 away. If I stay 2 away, I'm provoking attacks more. So now you're kind of left with this like chessy thing of like looking at the board and having to decide, what path can I go? Should I move there and just trigger this attack even though that dude's, you know, all the way over there? Or should I spend more movement to go here? I just think you're presented with a lot more interesting decisions. And I do find these suckers a bit harder to beat, but they're harder to beat in a way because they have like all these like physical resistances and whatnot, without having to be like, well, it's vampiric, and so I got to add this math and I got to do this, and like, oh, let me get out my calculator to make sure that I'm doing the right amount of damage. So it is what it is. Overall, it's close for me, but Hidden Valley edged out Realm of the Dead in a huge upset. Realm of the Dead is so angry. I get it, but it is what it is. So we have Hidden Valley at number 9, and let's move on. Number 8. So number 8, we got the Lost Relic, and Lost Relic I've done 3 times on the channel, so shouldn't be surprised that I liked it more than Hidden Valley or Realm of the Dead, because I've only done those 2 once. Well, actually, I think I did Realm of the Dead twice, right? Because I did something stupid. I think I messed up a rule, like something. I had to come back to Realm of the Dead at least twice, so or at least once, and did it on the channel twice. Lost Relic is really cool. I mean, it's a super short scenario, so you know you can play it multiple times. The draft is good. I don't love it, but it does mean that you're looking at your deck strategically, and if you don't have the greatest choices, you're trying to find synergies. And I think if you look at my last live playthrough where I actually put on 2 different Lost Relic scenarios, you can kind of see how that plays out. And the one that I ended up crushing second, I mean, I didn't really love that draft, but I was like, all right, how do I make this work? And I had some ideas and I had a plan that started to develop going in. And when there's only one day, one night, it's not crazy, right? Because by the time you are more advanced in this game, right? When you're going to like, I need to see cities, everything you're doing those first 4 rounds is basically trying to find the cards and saying, all right, well, I could do this and I can use that in conjunction with that to do that. And I can have this big attack, right? It's like I have disease or cure and disease and I get a whole bunch of block and I have counterattack and I'm gonna get a whole bunch of block, or I'm going to use the shock troops to reduce attack and take, paralyze and get him go away. Like there's like things that you're kind of thinking about. What you're doing in the Lost Relic is you're just taking that process, which is drawn out over multiple rounds, and you're just like, all right, I'm going to do this all pregame and we're going to see if I can develop a strategy with these cards that's going to allow me to defeat 2 dragons and then whatever else I need to do along the way in those 2 rounds. It's super, super tight. The action economy is off the chain, and you really need to know why you're doing certain things, right? It's like if you're going to try to do that ruins like I did in that live playthroughs, you need to know what you think that's going to add to you, and is it worth the 1 or 2 actions it's going to take to get it done, because you only have 12, 13 actions, because you only have 12, 13 turns. So every turn matters in a way that I think is really cool. And I just find it a nice, like, cool, I can get a game of Mage Knight done in 45 minutes or less. Let's do it and see what happens, right? So it's a cool scenario. I think it really forces you to think about the mage you're playing with more than some scenarios might, because you're like, well, I have 2 scenarios. I better lean into what this particular mage does well, right? If it's Goldix, let me make sure I'm going to lean into the mana stuff. If it's Norwas, let me make sure I'm leaning into the unit stuff. If it's Arethio, let's make sure I'm trying to do some wound management and whatever. And that's going to be really cool. Tovak, obviously, the block, et cetera. So it's a cool scenario. I like what it does. The fact that they can kind of capture a lot of the experience of Mage Knight in one day and one night, I think is pretty cool. And it's just a good scenario to kind of throw into your repertoire here. So that is number 8, the Lost Relic. Number 7 is Solo Conquest Blitz. That might surprise some people, right? Because you're like, oh, Solo Conquest is going to be in the top. And you're right, somewhere up there. I'm not going to tell you 1, 2, or 3 just yet, but it's up there. But Solo Conquest Blitz, to me, it just feels too condensed for what it is, right? So you're basically gearing up for that one city, and at the levels I play, it's like, all right, let me try to get this Megapolis, and I have 4 rounds to do it. But if you're thinking about, well, 4 rounds and I conquer 1 city versus the full conquest where I'm playing 6 rounds and I'm conquering 2, that's like, all right, 1 big city siege, for 3 rounds compared to 1 city siege for 4 rounds. It almost feels a little bit like not enough happened, even though a ton happened in 4 rounds. It just feels like not as satisfying. And I think there's a strategy component that comes in when there's 2 cities as opposed to 1, where it's like, how many wounds can I take in that first city? Because I still have to be ready to defeat the second one. Whereas Solo Conquest Blitz, it's like, all right, you're really just getting, as strong as you can, and you're just going to let it all go in this 1 city siege and see if you can pull it off. It's a really, really tight game. It's harder, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, you can't get the first city to use that to beef up to be able to take down the second one, right? Often, I've said this a lot, Solo Conquest, I always find the first city can be harder. And part of the reason it's harder is I know I can't take a ton of wounds because I need to still be alive and have a deck efficient enough that I can take on the second one. But if I beat the first one, I've usually gotten enough fame. I've usually gotten enough units. I've usually gotten enough of what I'm going to need to be really, really strong come that second city, which is going to be 3, 4 levels higher, depending on what the settings that I'm using in that particular playthrough. But Blitz is nice. It does bring the scenario shorter. So if you're really condensed on time, you're like, well, I can do a half-hour round. I have 2 hours. Let me just play Blitz, and I don't have a place where I can just leave this up to come back to it tomorrow. it makes sense to me. Just for my time and effort, Blitz kind of falls in just below all the rest of the base game scenarios that I'm going to put on this list, and all of the Volcare scenarios and the Lost Legion scenarios that I'm going to put on this list. It's just not as fulfilling of an experience, and it's almost not enough of a change of pace to even fall into the Shades of Tezla category, even though I do like it a bit better, because of what it is, and it's still a solo conquest, and you still have to, I gotta really beef up and get that one city and try to knock it down. But cool scenario. Glad I started playing that. I'll definitely be doing more of that. I'm probably going to do a solo conquest blitz with all 7 of the mages. At least that's the idea. That's the thought. We'll see how that goes over the next few months coming up. But that is number 7, solo conquest blitz. Number 6, Mind's Liberation. Woo! That scenario is so hard. It's so hard. It's so tight. I can't understand like why it's like only 2 days, 2 nights. It's really hard. I mean, you are running around trying to liberate 6 minds, and you're running around some core tiles that have some Draconum, and you got a lot of things going against you. I mean, it's super action economy tight. You're gonna have to liberate at least 2 mines in 2 separate days, and that assumes that you're able to liberate a mine in day 1. Otherwise, if you don't liberate a mine in day 1, you have to liberate 2 mines in the first night, 2 mines in the second day, and 2 mines in the second night. So that first day is huge. But those enemies, I mean, you're talking an orc and a monster right off the bat. I mean, you're taking wounds. So there's a lot that goes into Mind's Liberation. It's really cool when you can pull it off. I do find it the hardest of the scenarios at its base recommended levels. There's not much you're doing to make that more difficult. I think every other scenario that on this list, you can make an argument as to, hey, you're going to want to start increasing the difficulty the better you get at this game. Mind's Liberation, probably not so much. I mean, that sucker is just super hard out the box, and there's not much incentive to try to up that difficulty, and honestly not much of a clear way to do it even if you wanted to. It's kind of like Lost Relic in that sense. There's not much you can do to make Lost Relic harder than it is. It's a challenge, Mind's Liberation, it's a super challenge. I mean, you're again, those core mines, chilling with like here's a dragon and a monster, and you got to defeat 2 of those somehow with a deck that hasn't had that much time to breathe and really develop like it would in a solo conquest or in a Volcare scenario. So I really do like it. I think some of the thematic things that happen in there, where it's like at the end of every round, you got the miners that are like, hey, wait, hey, let me run you down, Mr. Dragon, who liberated me. Here's these things that you get. Thank you for all the good things you did for my family. Here's a blue crystal and a red crystal. It's like, all right, cool. Let me liberate some mines early. So these miners just chase me down every round. That's what they do. But it's funny. Either that, or can we get to the twisted part of Mage Knight, where you're like, well, maybe in liberating their mind, we decided that we're going to like extort them for crystals for the rest of their existence, which I would not put it beyond these mages, especially that freaking Orkea shaman. Nasty dudes. It is what it is. But cool scenario. Really like what it offers. It was actually a patron challenge that initially got me to try the Mind's Liberation scenario, so I was really excited about that, and glad that I did. We will see more Mind's Liberation in the future for sure, but it's super tough, and I definitely need to be ready for a challenge just to even consider it, and we will do it again in the future nonetheless. So that is number 6, Mind's Liberation. Number 5, here he is. This is the guy you were waiting for. All right, we got Volcare, and specifically Volcare's Return. Volcare's Return is super cool. It's a very, very hard scenario. I mean, the rulebook calls it the ultimate challenge. All right, maybe. I played nothing but Volcare's Return, Volcare's Quest, and Solo Conquest for a very, very long time, and I learned them in the order of Solo Conquest, then Quest, then Valkyrie's Return. And while Return, I think, is a really cool experience, and I like, gearing up that you can do a big city assault and then having to gear up again to do a pretty different kind of battle against a non-fortified legion with a ton of enemies. While I find that cool, I just find Valkyrie's Return the least able to be malleable to different strategies and different cards coming out. Like, there's certain things that just need to happen, and you're much more luck dependent on where Volcare goes based on his movement cards, and you're much more luck dependent on what that first garrison is going to be, and you're going to really need some movement cards because it's a big map and you got to get everything out. And I beat the scenario on Legendary once. I will try it more. I think maybe I did it twice, actually. I think I did it with Goldix once too. I'll never forget the first time I did it. It was like one of the most euphoric moments I've had in gaming, and I did it with Norwas. So it's just really, really hard to come back to the scenario over and over again. I think with, the daring levels and the heroic levels, they're cool. They're just not the big enough legions and garrison for me. I want to have bigger legions with more enemies. That's why I like it on Legendary. But on Legendary, there's so many things that could just go wrong that to really have a chance to win, you are just leaning into those big cards. I mean, you're going to need your Flame Wave. You're going to need your Tremor. You're going to need the things that, will make this game almost feel broken at times. It's not, in my opinion. I love those cards. I'm glad they're there. I think that it just makes sense that you have these really, really, really strong cards. And if you don't want to take it, and as long as you find them too strong, then just don't take it, right? But I think with some of these higher level challenges, you're going to need these things to come together for you. And with Volcare's Return, if you just don't have it and you're trying to play a Legendary, it's just like, well, that was just a waste of 2 hours because I really didn't have a chance, and I don't love that feeling, right? So, Valkyrie's Return, really, really great challenge. Is it the most epic of challenges? It's the one that combines basically Solo Conquest Blitz with a Valkyrie's Quest, right? I mean, it's the same two challenges. You're defeating one city like Solo Conquest Blitz, and you're defeating one legion like in Valkyrie's Quest. I'm not sure that combination works in how you're deck building and the kind of unique way you need to approach those two challenges. So I think I would prefer one or the other when it comes down to it. And I think my list is reflecting that more than anything else. So number 5, Valkyrie's Quest. Number 4, we are going back to Tezla, people. That is right. Number 4 is going to be Life and Death. Don't just give me Realm of the Dead. Don't just give me the High Priestess of the Elementalist faction. Give me them both, man. I love them both combined. I do find that the most interesting way to play with the Tezla content. I do find that you best go to the Elementalist faction first and then cross over to the dark side. You're going to get artifacts. You're less likely to get paralyzed. There's a lot of reasons why you go Elementalist faction first. But that said, I just really enjoy the variety there, the way it plays out. I like when you have those middle tiles and you're like, well, you just rolling a die for every orc, see what faction it comes from, or not. They're not even orcs, really. The green enemies from the different factions. I like how that kind of can change some things. And I just find it really interesting the way that the map is a split and you're kind of operating in the territories of these two very different, very disparate factions, and how that is represented by the map and what goes where, and having the graveyards on that side, but I can still go get my artifacts when I want them. I think all that's super, super interesting. You don't have pursuit, you don't have ambush, which I find better overall. I mean, they're both mechanics that, again, are interesting. They're just not my main go-tos. So I just think all that comes together for Life and Death is really, really cool. And you're getting a really close approximation, right? I mean, you instead of having the two cities with Solar Conquest, now you have these two, faction leader homes, and you have these dials which are kind of similar to Volcare, and all that kind of comes together in a very interesting, very dynamic way. And I thought this was a great introduction to Shades of Tezla, to the level that I wish it was fourth in the book, and then you kind of built up to it, because by the time I did this, I found the other three scenarios like, well, that wasn't as fun or dynamic as the one that was in the front of the book that I thought was awesome. So it is what it is. So if you're going to do Shades of Tezla, I think maybe you want to do Realm of the Dead first and then Hidden Valley and then combine them. I think that might be a better introduction. I did find Life and Death on the recommended level of 5 and 5 to be super hard for a while. And then I started to crack the code a little bit, understood what faction did what and what enemy did what and what I needed to really be prepared for as I went to certain parts of the map. And then having done that, now it's, again, I think I beat it on level 6 last time. I'll probably come back to Life and Death a couple of times to see if I can't work up the ladder a little bit with these different faction leaders. I mean, it does go up to 12 on each leader, which is rather insane. I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon, but is what it is. Shades of Tezla, Life and Death, very, very cool scenario, and that's why it's my number 4. But now let's get to the top 3. Number 3, Dungeon Lords. Dungeon Lords just fascinates me with how you're just gathering all of these cards all the time, and you're gathering spells and you're gathering artifacts, and you learn about mana management because you have all these freaking spells, and your deck just gets ridiculous. But sometimes these ridiculous cards don't always synergize all that well together, so you still need to try to find a balance there. Cards that allow you to throw away cards are hugely important because you got to thin your deck, because your deck's getting so much bigger as you go. But by the 5th round, again, it's a 5-round scenario, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never getting through my deck because it's too big and there's only too many cards that I can't just toss. I mean, but then you find yourself doing ridiculous things like taking this super strong spell and putting it sideways for move 1 because you have to, right? So the card management / deck building choices that happen with Dungeon Lords are super interesting. Dungeon Lords, you're really throwing together all these cards on almost every turn. It feels like, where you're getting a new strong card and you're making choices of like, all right, what does your deck really need? And I think that's super cool. I think I'm in a place with Dungeon Lords that I can go ahead and make it a little more difficult. I can add another countryside tile. We can get another dungeon in there. I love those times where you're playing, where you strategically need to decide, well, I'm not going to be able to do that now. I'm going to get a bunch of movement and I'm going to come all the way to heck back later using the tunnel system, right? That's such an interesting idea. It adds a layer of strategy. It's hard to pull off. It's easier with Wolfhawk. It's like movement. Yes, she's great at it. And usually it will happen when, again, next to a monastery on one of the early tiles, well, now you're putting a hidden tomb right on tile 1. That's bananas, right? And now you have to figure out, how am I going to kill this dragon now, or am I going to use this tunnel system to come back to do it later? But again, that tunnel system, you have to trace it around lakes. It doesn't go through lakes. It doesn't go through swamps, right? It's like underground travel, which I find really cool too. There's little things I just appreciate. There's like, oh, I understand why that rule exists, because yeah, you can't do a tunnel through a lake. It would kind of flood. Idiot. That's right. Because I say idiot to myself, because I was like, why can't you do that? I was like, oh, right. Yeah, cool. That makes sense. That's a cool design choice. So a lot to like about Dungeon Lords, a lot to like about digging through that artifact deck and that spell deck, and a lot to like about just the challenge that Dungeon Lords represents in itself. So what a very cool base game scenario. Again, came to that super late. I mean, I started playing Dungeon Lords of Minds Live even after I did the Tezla scenarios. So it shows you how late in my progression through this game that it was. And I believe it also was a patron challenge. So that was cool. And I appreciated the urge, the nudge over the edge to get that one done and get that one done on the channel. And we will certainly be seeing more Dungeon Lords again in the future. I can assure you of that. So a really, really cool one. Number 3, Dungeon Lords. So number 2. So there's only 2 left, really. I can assure you Volcare's Return Blitz is not going to be one of the final 2. So you're down to the 2 big ones. So is it going to be Solar Conquest? Is it going to be Volcare's Quest? Solo Conquest, for Conquest, some of you've heard me say this before. I am putting Solo Conquest at number 2. That is right. That is right. This is a huge upset. There has not been a bigger upset in solo playthroughs land since I put Krang above Aretha, and I'm sorry. No, I'm not. It is what it is. Solo Conquest is amazing. It's just the greatest way to really dig into this game, and it's the greatest way to keep getting better at this game, and it's the greatest way to enjoy this game for the rest of your life, because it's so freaking cool, because you can keep scaling up the difficulty, because every time you play it, something happens that you haven't seen before, because it's just that great. It's such a cool experience going through Solo Conquest. 3 days, 3 nights, you have this ridiculous challenge ahead of you. Figure it out. Manage your time, manage your turns, choose the right actions, get the right units, figure out how you can conquer not just one of these suckers, but how are you going to get 2 of them, and set those levels at a level where it's going to be a challenge, right? Where you're going to lose a bunch before you kind of crack the code and figure it out, figure out what makes some of the cards as strong as they are, and what conditions need to exist for you to be able to use them as well as you can. So I think Solo Conquest is perhaps the greatest gift to a solo gamer. If you like solo gaming, Solo Conquest, again, just gives you this built-in mechanism to continually push yourself, to continually try to achieve new things, to continually re-experience a game that you like and hopefully grow to love over and over and over again, that I think it's hard to do from a design perspective, right? You know, most games have a limit. Like, you play at level 6, that's it. Spirit Island, you're playing Arkham, and you can play at Expert. Not even that fun to play at Expert, because the Chaos Bags is going to slap you over the face a few times, but you can, but that's it. It doesn't have this literally infinite built-in method to increase the difficulty as you get better. And that's such a cool thing to have. And then when you're kind of tired of playing at these really high levels because some things just kind of become crutches for you, then you just kind of kick it back, and then you can re-experience the game at a lower level, taking cards that you've never taken before, because you can kind of mess around a little bit and just make this like your playground. It's a really, really cool thing that I just love to keep coming back to Solo Conquest, and it's why it's going to be so heavily featured in my Mage Knight videos going forward, and the Megapolises that I'm into now on the channel. We'll be doing a lot more of those for sure, and we'll see what I want to do with it. I mean, I know of stories where guys have played on 22. I don't think it's ever going to be me. I don't see how that's even possible without like disease/cure and, you know, flame wave and, you know, a few other select cards. And at that point, you're just like, almost, can I get the right cards to do this? I do like playing at levels where I can still make different strategies work based on what the different offers are, right? So for me, you know, 9-12 is kind of where I'm at right now, but we'll see. I might try to get up to like 12-12 for the channel and kind of take it from there. But the fact that I had the option to keep coming back to the scenario that I love and keep doing it in new ways, and it's never getting stale for me because I can kind of make those decisions, is one of the things that just makes Solo Conquest so freaking cool. And playing it with all 7 mages and how they approach it just a little bit differently from each of the others is super cool. And I just love what the different cities provide. I mean, that white city, it's like, I don't want to see the white city because that extra armor is brutal. Shoot, I don't want to see the red city because that making those physical attacks have brutal, that's brutal. I don't want to see the green city as a first city, especially because I don't want to take those extra wounds to my discard pile. Oh shoot, I don't want to see the blue city because it's going to make those freezers need 20 block, or it's going to paralyze and make me have to throw away one of my units. None of these cities are good, right? That's so cool, right? The only one that's good marginally, if you're like me, don't care about scoring, is going to be that green city. If you get it in that last round, you're like, I don't put some wounds in my discard, who cares? I'm never going through my discard pile again, unless of course I have meditation, and that could be bad, but is what it is. Love Solo Conquest. Obviously it comes into my number 2, and that leaves 1 left, and let's get to it right now. Number 1, Volkaire's Quest. Volkaire's Quest is so awesome. Let's look at Volky Poo again. I mean, look at this dude, and look at all that. Volkaire's Quest is just bananas. And probably if I hadn't played Solo Conquest so much, you know, it might be one over Volcara's Quest. But I love Volcara's Quest on Legendary so much in the sense that it's just a free-for-all, fame-chasing bananas, kill everything you see, get every bit of fame that you can. You see an adventure site, you freaking demolish it at some point and do it as quickly as possible and get yourself ready, because this Legion is coming across the map and it's huge and it's got a bunch of enemies. I mean, I think if I play at Legendary, I think it has 13 tokens in it. It's just nuts. And there's just all these different combos of things that you can do because it's not fortified. So now range attack becomes huge. It just makes everything different, right? When you're dealing with the Legion as opposed to going against a city, it creates value in some units that wouldn't necessarily be there in Solo Conquest. It creates value in some advanced actions that wouldn't necessarily be there in Solo Conquest. It creates value in some artifacts because all of a sudden that range attack is just as good as siege attack unless you have a bunch of enemies with unit fortifications. But even then, there's so many freaking enemies that now all this range attack matters. And you just have this giant free-for-all battle that you see coming from like a game mile away, but you know that timers are ticking and you have to be super efficient. You want to keep Volcare at bay even while you're spending all your actions to do these adventure sites, to, you know, keep destroying those mage towers, to get those spells, to burn down monasteries, to get those artifacts, to do all the things that you need to do to get a deck that's going to be ready to take on this clown and his army of clowns. So I mean, that would be a totally weird, awful version of this game if it was like rethemed as like an army of clowns. Don't do that, WizKids or anybody else. Don't do that. But his army of orcs and dragons and respectable mage or keep people. Yeah, whatever. What's a keep person? That's right. So the heroes, which some reason are working with this guy. Why? Why heroes? What are you doing? But it is what it is. They're bad heroes, if that's a thing. But I guess the mages are not exactly good. So, you know, it all makes sense in Mage Knight land, which whatever. Mechanics are so freaking good in this game. The theme will just work no matter what it is, except the army of clowns. That probably would break the game for me. But I digress. Volcara's Quest, number one for me. Volcara's Quest on Legendary, to be more specific, although I do like it at all the levels, but I really, really love it on Legendary. I love that huge Legion, and I love the challenge, and I love how it makes all the cards look a little bit different because now you're evaluating them against the Legion as opposed to the normal Solo Conquest. And I just love, you know, how it works with my playstyle where it's like, kill everything. You're going to take some wounds, you're going to heal some wounds. So you do the wound management thing and you're just going to wipe everything out because you just need to do it and you need to get strong and you need to get your fame into that level 6 territory, and you need to be in a place where you can take on this huge Legion before it's all said and done. And it's just that indiscriminate, like, I'm going to destroy everything within these first 6 tiles, and I just got to figure out what the most effective way to do that moving around the board is. And then you get to those points where you're like, well, I'm up at this tile, I could go over there, but that's going to take me further away from where I need to get back to. And there's all that like chessy positioning strategy that comes into play that in my experience is not as luck dependent as it is in Volcara's return, right? Volcara's Quest, Volcare, yeah, it could change which way he's going, but for the most part, he's just moving toward the portal. Where Volcare's return, it makes a huge difference if Volcare is up here or down here, because you have to make all your decisions to try to create a lot of distance between you and Volcare by the time you reveal that city tile. With Volcare's Quest, you're just running around the map and just like indiscriminately killing things. You have to be aware of where Volcare is, but there isn't as much luck dependency when it comes to the order of the color of the cards that come off, you know, from Volcare's deck. So, and Volcare's Quest 2 has the added benefit of being a lot less to manage as far as, you know, adding, you know, things to his deck. You have indecisive units, but they'll just go away. You're not really adding anything. His deck is what it is. There's a lot less upkeep. His enemies are what they are. So I think that's one of the things too that makes Quest go above Solo Conquest. Solo Conquest, you're doing all this management with the dummy player. With Volcare's Quest, you have your enemy. His name is Volcare. You better take him on. and it's going to go down. This is a big battle, so you better get some big cards or some big powers to pull this one off. So that is my top 10 scenarios. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is a question I have gotten often over the last 2 years, so this is something that I've wanted to do for a while. Just felt like I had to do the top 10 mages first, but really glad to get this on the camera. Where did I get it wrong? What's your favorite scenario? What scenario should I take another look at? Maybe you have an argument for first recognizance, and maybe that's something I should kind of think about a little bit more. But what is what it is. Who loves the Tezla scenarios? I'd love to know if you love Tezla as number one, man. Let me know that. I'm so curious about how people really experience Tezla. It just feels like an afterthought to the game in a lot of ways, but that could just be my own personal bias and my own personal experience from it, since I just came to it so late. I think Ultimate Edition hopefully will change a lot of that now, because people are getting the game with Tezla, so you're not like hunting down this additional expansion. So I'm curious if that is the case. And again, I don't mean to crap on Tezla. I do like Tezla a lot. I mean, these are top 10 Mage Knight scenarios. Don't forget, Mage Knight is like my second favorite game, very, very close behind Spirit Island. I love all these scenarios. It's just when you get into ranking, that's why I talk some of the things I don't like about the scenarios that are in the bottom half of this list. But dude, I will play them all, and I will continue to play them all. Just some I'm going to play more than others, right? So that is that. Thank you so much for your support of solo playthroughs, everything that people have done over the last 2 years to really continue to help this channel grow and become more established in this space here on YouTube. If you want to see what's coming up in solo playthroughs land, I do have a calendar on my Patreon page. The link is in the description below. I put out a calendar a week before every month telling you what is going to be in store for that month, including live playthroughs, which are roughly every Wednesday these days, and on Sunday or Mondays I release my other video. I always shoot for Sunday. Every once in a while it comes out on the Monday, but you can keep abreast about what's coming down the pipe. Make sure you don't miss anything that you want to see. Other than that, likes, comments, epiphanies, put them in the comment section below. I'll get back to you. We'll be back in 3 months with another top 10, so stay tuned for that. Topic TBD, but I got some ideas. But if you have an idea for a top 10 that you want to see on this channel, please put that in the comment section below, and I will absolutely take that into consideration. And until next time, whenever that is, happy gaming.